Welcome to Halo, Love, and Country. And in the past, we've talked about Mitch and I together, sometimes myself with other guests. Today, it's Mitch and I together. Um, we've talked about the risks of LGBTQ people serving in the military. Then we've talked about the risks of uh, trans people just being themselves or coming out or being in the military. We've kind of covered all that. And then we've also talked, we've had the more general topic of the risks of being an American now in America, speaking out and giving your opinion. We've sort of touched on the issues of free speech um, in an increasingly polarized political environment, the risks of speaking out, touched on that a bit. But today we're going to talk about we're going to respond to some of the questions that we've received, uh, respond to what is kind of on our viewers' minds. And Mitch is going to ask some of our questions, and I'm going to answer, and then he's going to respond too, because he and I have different ways of looking at things sometimes. And sometimes we're in a kind of complete agreement, other times completely different, or not that completely
It's
different,
kind of on our viewers' minds.
and I think that's interesting, when we do that. So, Mitch, what is on our plate today?
All right. So uh, the questions we are getting so far are very we're getting a mix of where are we in society versus I don't like this society very much, which is um, interesting and awkward, and it's clear that there are a lot of us who are very uncomfortable. One of the questions we seem to be getting the most of is, what is it that I'm supposed to do? The particular question I'm looking at uh, is that my brother is transitioning male to female. Um, what should I do? Which is sort of asked in the tone of there wasn't a lot of detail. So I'm not sure if that question, it feels like a question where they're saying, what can I do to make it better? But I have seen questions pointed toward us that amounted to, why should I not stop them?
How can I help them, or why should I not stop them? Yeah, those are,
But this particular question is more along the lines of, it feels like the tone is, what can I do to help?
yeah, and to me, the beginning of trying to be, and my theme in my life, not that I always practice it, and I've truly failed at it sometimes, is to be loving towards the people in my life. What is the loving thing to do with a trans brother who's becoming a woman or whatever he's going to call himself at that point? Um, and love is kind of a general sort of thing. It sort of works on with people in all situations, and that's to work on trying to be accepting of that journey that that person is going through. And sometimes it's harder when it's somebody that's very close to us, like a brother, that we've gotten very used to them being a male. We maybe shared a room with them. We've seen them in various situations, from not being dressed to uh, having their first girlfriend or whatever. And again, we don't know the specifics of this particular situation. But listening with acceptance, that is the big thing we can do. Is when somebody says something that's very difficult for us, if we can't say I agree with you, we can at least be there and say I accept you, or show that we accept them. we can accept things that we may not agree with, or we may not understand, or we may be vehemently opposed to. We can listen. We can have a listening ear. And the way we look at somebody when they talk shows us that we're listening. We try to maintain eye contact. Without staring at the person, we can nod our head that we understand. And of course, the best kind of listening for someone that is in their trans journey is to try to indicate verbally that we do understand. And one way to do that is to say, well, I understand that you're thinking of becoming, or maybe you've decided to dress and look more like what we would call a woman. And I want you to know that I'm listening, I'm hearing, I'm listening. And you can say that, or you can just nod and listen without having to say anything. And listening is communicated non-verbally primarily. It's communicated by the way your presence is, how relaxed your body is, how much you avoid having to set someone straight, or how much you keep from criticizing them, how much you're just at peace in their presence. And that's a hard thing to teach, but we all know what it's like. We know when someone's really listening to us versus someone who's like waiting just to say the next thing to try to get our point across, or to show the other person the right way, And it's so tempting if this brother, thinking of the brother of the trans person, is a religious person and may think this is violating their religion, or their religious concepts in some way. And begins, we can think of all the things that do not help. And one of those things is giving your religious take on what your brother is going through. Because they may or may not share your religious beliefs. And if the religious belief is judgment, it's one of the most harmful things you can ever do with a trans person, or anyone else with a serious issue where they're changing their lives, they're going through a lot of pain. And believe me, trans folks go through a bunch of pain and suffering while they're trying to find their way into a sexual identity that seems congruent with the way they see themselves. They're trying to find a way to be on the outside what they are on the inside, and not have that to be in constant conflict within themselves. That's the biggest conflict, because we know people that are transitioning are just in tremendous inner conflict, and it's not a time for us to add outer conflict to them, adding our opinion, adding our judgment, or even, and I know this is really maybe a hard one for our viewers, adding our societal rules of how they have to behave as a young man or young woman, or older man or older woman, whatever, how they should behave. It's like, because we have a bunch of rules. We have bathroom rules some places. We now have laws about bathrooms. Whoever thought we'd have laws about bathrooms, but we do. And but if you go to the dentist's office, he doesn't usually have a male and female bathroom. If you go to many parks, they're same sex bathrooms. In normal times, this would just be navigated. This would say, okay, well, you feel like a woman, you're dressing like a woman, well, go into the women's and do what women do, and maybe not make a big friggin' deal out of it, because we're not watching each other, usually, going to the toilet. No, we usually don't care about that. We don't watch what other people's business is at a urinal or a toilet. So there I'm kind of going on and on. What are your thoughts about this, Mitch? What's going on for you?
So I've sort of been receiving side questions that are associated with that. The idea of what is it you're supposed to do, and the ones that I personally am catching most of are more along the lines of these people are harming themselves. Our society is giving them permission to harm themselves. I don't agree, and I feel like I should step in. One of our viewers had sent me a clip from a site called Transition Justice, Transition underline Justice, which I found interesting because the term itself, I recognized it, but I had to look it up. There's a term called transitional justice, which has to do with the process that society goes through when it recognizes something that they've done as a human rights violation, and they're turning around trying to figure out what do we do with this. Like reparations would fall into that category. If we think we need to do this, how do we do this? So transitional justice. This site is transition_justice. And the link that was sent to me was an individual saying that their transition, male to female, just did them irreparable harm. Which absolutely does happen. You know, there are always going to be people who go through any change, any process, any developmental, any growth, and then find that the direction they went in was not really the one that they should have gone in. The problem I had with this link was that in this case, the individual talking says that 95% of people who go through a transition regret it on the other side, which, you know, all I could really do was tell the individual, you know, I had to dig a little bit and send some information basically saying that, you know, there is no process that we go through that if it has a 95% negative outcome that anybody continues it. That doesn't happen. Not in the modern era anyway. Like, I mean, you know, if you want to look backwards and say things like we had social, there was a time when we sterilized Native American, Black women, lower class women. We forcibly sterilized them. We sterilized them without their permission. Oftentimes they didn't know that it had been done. That was something that certainly had a very high ratio of failure in terms of it was never supposed to happen. The people didn't want it. But that's about the only time you're going to see that much negativity toward the change that was made is when it's being made against your will or without your knowledge. And then when you find out about it, you go, well, I didn't want that. In this case, the idea that 95% of the trans people in this country are unhappy with their transition, largely it's just laughable. It's bad information. And I feel like there is a lot of that out there. I mean, this is an entire website. And also, I should note, I looked up the website, and it's actually a legal fund. They're putting this information out there for people who want to sue over a transition that they feel didn't go the way that they needed for it to. And they absolutely should be able to find some sort of redress, some sort of compensation if the process they went through was badly flawed. There's no such thing as perfect in a medical procedure, but you know there are definitely outcomes. You know, I've seen a lot of people talk about the steps they took in their transition and how not all of them were pleasant or felt like growth or were what they wanted them to be. But I'm you know, basically, I have to go back and agree with you in the context that, you know, support sometimes is just listening. And if you feel like they're making a decision, if they're making a mistake in the decision, I guess that becomes a question back to you. How far into the process are you asking a question versus making an accusation? Because clearly there's a point where you made enough of an adjustment you can't just turn around and go back to where you were. Um, so what I'm going to say to that is that if you don't think they're making the right choice and you feel like you have to address it, you also owe them an ear to listen to their answer.
Well, and I think it's like, and what is the transitioning process? I mean, for some people, it's, I was a man, now I dress like a woman, or I was a woman, I dress like a man. That's it. For some people,
That matches your identity.
yeah, it's like, there seems to be more visibility, and I don't know the statistics now about doing surgeries, having a breast removed, or or the more serious ones is having major surgeries, such as a penis is converted into a vagina, or a vagina is converted to a penis. Those are major steps. And it seems like it would be, again, while we're listening, if we're asked for our opinion and we know something about their process, for instance, if the person has decided on surgery,
Mm-hmm.
and we're concerned about that, we could ask, well, who's going to do the surgery? We could do what we do with anything else, which is, I've decided to have, let's see, an example. Oh, I have prostate cancer, and I've decided to have prostate cancer surgery. Well, if I'm saying that to someone I love, I want them to listen, but I also want, if they have information that prostate cancer surgery is not the best solution, for instance, in my case, radiation was a better solution, and I had someone say to me, I think radiation implants are a better solution for your particulars. I want to hear that. What I don't want to hear is, well, what's wrong with you? You don't have prostate cancer. You just think you do, or something, that kind of response. And of course, the problem with that analogy is that this is a deeply felt psychological issue. You're a man, but you feel like a woman, or you feel like you don't identify as a man. So what is the solution to that? Of course, there are mental health people, psychologists, psychiatrists, marriage and family counselors, other counselors who specialize and have a lot of knowledge about transitioning. And why wouldn't we encourage the person to seek the best knowledge that they can about this so they can decide? And I'm just not seeing some kind of pressure on people to transition. I'm not seeing the outside world saying, you're a man, you've got a penis, you really need to become a woman. I'm just not. Who is saying that?
Right.
What I'm hearing is permission. If that's something you need to explore, at least, and I don't know where, I'm not even sure where the permission's probably coming more in social media than anywhere else. It's not like we're having.
I'm seeing the thing that I see on that one is, because I'm in the schools, what I see is that ongoing argument that somehow teachers are encouraging this situation in schools, as if they address it any further than the child bringing it up. Like, we have lots of young men, young women who by middle school are already engaging the issues of their sexuality. And there are lots of them who are comfortable with the fact that at this point they are lesbian, they are gay. And the idea that we do more than just acknowledge, hey, you feel like you feel. That's not a problem. Let's get back to work. You're going to dress the way you're going to dress. You're going to go through your day. You like who you like. You're going to talk about the people that you like. This is not a problem. This is life. That's not a focus. Probably the closest it ever got to being a focus was at one point we encouraged a young man, great kid, but terrified of being called on the carpet for trying to be part of the dance squad or a cheerleader. And my problem with that was that, you know, whether or not you're gay has nothing to do with you being on the dance squad or being a cheerleader. There are males in both of those groups, regardless of their sexuality. When I was in high school, and I say high school specifically because we didn't have a dance squad. But when I was in high school, you were already seeing, you would see male cheerleaders for years before that. Their dance squads weren't a big thing, but you know, they were already developing and there were boys in that group. So it's sort of it's an internalized problem where they think people are looking at them for a completely different quality than what they are. The fact that he was very soft, very pleasant, you could easily have called him effeminate, is completely separated from the fact that he is a boy trying to be on the dance squad. So, you know, and that is the nature of our children. They think people are focusing on them every minute of every day. They are the center of a TV show with their name on it, and everyone is watching all the time.
So I think what you're saying is that you haven't seen in any schools lately classes on how you should become transgendered and how you must take on your gay identity and get a boyfriend.
Yeah.
There's no classes on getting a boyfriend for the boys, and so in kindergarten you're not seeing anyone being told, okay, you need to go get a boyfriend if you're a boy. Yeah, I take it you're not saying any of that, right?
Yeah, no. Fortunately, I never had to deal with kindergartners because they are rabid animals most of the time. They are absolutely insane. But you know, you see, you know, the lowest grade I ever had the opportunity to teach in was 5th grade. And you're easily seeing it as early as 5th grade, even if they're not expressing it, you know, in the same way that even as adults, that guy with the soft voice, and the easy manner, you know, you'll see people question, you know, is that guy gay? You see the exact same thing with kids. You see kids that everything about their manner just seems, you know, he is not rough and tumble enough necessarily to be one of the boys. She is way too rough and tumble to easily be one of the girls. And oddly,
I was just saying, but they very well, this girl that's very rough and tumble could very well be a mother with 5 children, totally heterosexual when she grows up.
yes,
And you could have a very effeminate boy who has interested in ballet that becomes a heterosexual father. I mean, all of that.
yeah,
It's just it's mostly stereotypes that have some truth to them, you know.
Yeah, and another thing that I'm seeing that I don't really understand the mechanics of, boys holding hands with other boys, like they're making a point of, I can absolutely hold another man's hand because I am that comfortable with who I am. This is my homie and I'm holding his hand. There's just like, you know, because I mean, we're used to girls holding hands and hugging, but you don't really see that in my generation, you didn't see that so much in boys. When we were in middle school, but now it's like standard. It's every day. They hug, they hold hands. And I think
Really?
they say, I love you.
You're seeing boys holding hands.
Yeah, yeah.
Straight
They hold
Oh,
hands and,
cool.
they're just but they're not doing it in, it's that Italian, it's not amore, it's amice. It's not, there's no love involved. This is my boy and I'm down with him. I'm holding his hand because, I want him here. I want him right here. There's nothing gay about it, and they, yeah, and you see, I see a lot of that in the hallways.
Do you remember the pictures that maybe, I don't know if you ever saw them, during the Vietnam War, you would see two South Vietnamese soldiers with American helmets and everything walking down the road holding hands. And they would, and if you go to Thailand now or Vietnam, the men hold hands. Folks in men in Islamic countries hold hands.
Yes.
And it's just,
Yeah,
it is a sign of affection, and it usually is not gay at all. It's just, but it might be, it could be.
Well, it is what it
It's a
is.
sign. I take it you don't want to do that with your friends.
Who, me? No. My friends, I have been called on the carpet for telling my friends that I love them, because I use that. I mean, I mean what I say. It doesn't matter if you're a male friend or a female friend. I have kissed my male friends and my female friends. It's, you haven't seen somebody in forever. You give them a big hug. It's a kiss on the cheek. I'm like, dude, where you been? It's not.
Yeah.
And I've had people like, why are you doing that?
Yeah. It's scary. It can be scary for some men. Yeah.
Well, and some women freak out about that, and it makes no sense. But whatever. Because again, I know who I am. I'm not gay, but if I were, which is another thing that you see, the idea that a heterosexual male can have opinions and concerns about homosexuality that are in a positive light without being gay or closeted. People don't want to accept that. People don't want to believe that you can be just comfortable.
We want those categories, Yeah. We want to have categories that are easy to fit into, Rules. We like rules a lot.
Well, American society, definitely that is true. We don't want to be questioned. We want things to be very straightforward. However we're doing it must be the right way, and in whatever way we're not doing it must be the wrong way. American exceptionalism has its own issues. Okay, but I want to swing, because we've been talking about this one for a minute. Another question, and this one is mildly problematic. I've had several people, and I will note that they are largely coming from the LGBTQ side of our listeners, are asking why Charlie Kirk was so appealing. Why do so many people like him? And I want to lead into that just a little bit. I've had a lot of people that I consider to be rational, intelligent human beings who consistently say they don't have a problem with the things Charlie Kirk was saying, in terms of when they watched his show, when they saw his debates, they didn't have a problem with the course of those conversations. So I'm going to float that one back to you. Do you have any thoughts on? I mean, were you ever able to sort of sit down with his channel, his videos, and listen to his rhetoric and where he was going, what he wanted?
Before he was murdered, that horrible tragedy, I'd only heard his name. I didn't really watch anything he did. To me, he was part of the radical right, and I wasn't studying it or anything. But after he died, I did go and listen and watch, and there was an aspect of him that is very appealing. He goes to a college campus. He's white. He dresses nice. He talks. His voice is usually, it's very nice. Was a very intelligent man. He was very skilled in debating. He had a lot of facts. Or at least he, quoted a lot of things. And he was had a clever intelligence to him. And he was handsome. He presented well on television. I didn't see him as, like, I watched him interact with students, and he wasn't personally insulting to them. Usually, I didn't see any of that. So his presentation was very appealing to me. Now, his message had no appeal to me whatsoever. So
Right.
I would not be his audience. His appeal, he presented himself as very open to other points of view. And my experience of him was that he had no openness whatsoever to other people's points of view. He was using debate techniques to present a certain ideology, which I don't agree with, that I don't find compelling or very interesting, because it comes a lot out of my background of white fundamentalist, middle class, rural, border states, southern state values. And many of those values are racist values. They're a particular religious point of view that I don't share, a particular view of Jesus that I don't have. You know, Jesus to me is probably the most important spiritual figure in my life. But the way he talks about Christianity doesn't seem to have a whole lot to do with Jesus to me. But his appeal, there are people who find his view of Christianity very compelling, who are very much interested in finding reaction and reacting to liberal values, what I consider democratic values. They feel oppressed by an elite. They see it as an elite of liberalism that is talking down to them. And so his message to me was very appealing to the MAGA folks, to many conservative people. And it was appealing on a very, very basic emotional level. And he even appeared to be open. He gave the appearance of being open. What he showed to me was a lot of courage, walking into a college campus and directly challenging a lot of the liberal values that are taught there. And I actually think it was quite good for the students for him to come. I think it's very important for people that hold my values to be exposed to someone who can debate very effectively for the other point of view. I didn't find him particularly receptive. No, I didn't find him receptive at all to other points of view. But I think that's part of the MAGA approach too, is you don't have to listen anymore. You can just effectively present your point of view, and above all, suppress the opposition. And to me, Charlie kind of suppressed the opposition with his logic, which is a lot better than using the National Guard, or throwing people off TV. He logically argued. And to me, that was very, very good training for the students on campus. But that's what I'm thinking his appeal was. What are you thinking?
I disagree with every single thing you just said. He was, he didn't have good rhetoric. If anything, he had misinformation and twisted details and sort of gotcha quality information. Like it was if you came to one of those, like watching those debates, people were often asking honest questions that he then gave disingenuous answers to.
Why was it so appealing? What was the appeal of all those?
Well, no, and the appeal is if as Americans, we like winners. We are very, very fond of winners. And if you won the debate, you made the other person look silly, or you seem like, when he sits up there and smiles while he lies, and the other person doesn't have enough of the information to say, oh, well, no, sir. That thing you just said, for instance, the easiest one, because it applies to me. He often said that Black people in America were like 17% of the population, but we're like 58% of the prison population. And that marks Black people in this country as a source of criminality and trouble. Okay, you could say that if that were true, but it's not. Black people don't make up 17%, don't make up 58% of the prison population. They're somewhere between 15 and 20% of the prison population. The number that I was told we actually get like 58, 60% in is exonerations. Black people are falsely sent to prison way more often. And when they have the ability to address their case, they are released from prison more often than anyone else. Problem being that, of course, we often as a group don't have the money to fight long court battles. So yes, he used so let's hit that from a different angle. Among my friend group, like, once upon a time, when I was first on Facebook, in the channels that I would go to, the arguments I would have, they had a little insulting side nickname for me. They called me Strawman Mitch, because what they felt was I was constantly setting up circumstances where I could say, well, you said this, and this means that, and that's wrong, so you're wrong. I didn't agree with that. What I was doing from where I was standing was saying, this is a logical outcome of the decision that you're talking about making. The process you are talking about leads to here. And they, and they would often, well, that's not what I said. No, I didn't say that's what you said. That's where that leads. If you agree with the thing you're saying, do you agree with where it's going to go? Well, it hasn't gone there yet. You can't prove that. Well, I can think ahead. I can look around corners, and maybe I'm wrong, but that does seem like a logical end result of the thing that you are saying. Charlie was very good at that, which is to say he was very bad about doing that in the context that he would take what you said and make it sound like you had said something completely different. He would add detail that you didn't add, or again, he would simply lie about the history associated to the thing you had said. So again, we like winners. We like that at the end of the debate, you come away looking more polished, more effective, that you look like you have scored more points. And the thing that we do not do is go backwards and say, he said A, B, C, A and B were wrong. C was somewhat true, but you can't get to C from his A and B. His rhetoric was often inflammatory. And again, and a lot of people I know have said, I never saw him say anything insulting. And my position on that is I've watched maybe 3 hours total of all of his shows. in 5 and 10 minute chunks just here and there. I have heard him use racial slurs. I have heard him call, basically everything that has anything to do with DEI, everybody who, in his opinion, falls under that umbrella, who is basically only people of color, and to a degree, the physically handicapped, physically, mentally handicapped people. The people that fall into those categories are people that he presents them in a light that is not accurately reflecting who they are and what they are dealing with, and
that's insulting, isn't it?
Well, yes, it's always insulting when you try to belittle a group by presenting them in a way that they actually aren't. It's and actually forget about belittling. It's a direct attack. It is a direct attack to say these people are criminals, as represented by the fact that they go to jail 3 times more often than this other group, especially when that detail is a lie. And that's another problem. Calling people liars is hard because you can easily just say, well, no, he looked at a chart and that's what he thought that chart said, and he was repeating that information. Okay, but that doesn't mean I don't know what that chart says, and I'm here to tell you he's wrong. And then that leads to an argument of other people looking at that same chart and trying to determine if they agree with my assessment or the assessment of someone like Charlie. And just the other day, I was having an argument with someone I was going into the idea that you can say he's not racist. You can say you never heard him say anything racist or misogynistic or whatever. But when your speeches are heavily attended by white nationalists, by white supremacists, I feel like you should be looking at the things you're saying and wondering why it attracts those people. If racist and misogynist quote you, how are the things you are saying not racist and misogynist? How does it not serve their end goals for you to be speaking that way? So you can say you don't agree with them, and again, I'm not going to go too far into the details of him that I could find, but just on that detail, his speech was problematic, and it should have felt, in my opinion, it should have felt problematic to him based on that one front.
What's appealing about that to our country? What is appealing about someone telling obvious lies and obvious data that's not true? And what is the appeal?
I don't think
it has a huge appeal.
Yeah, I don't think it's obvious. I think it feels like it should be true based on the last 50, 60, 70 years of our history. We have primed this country to think mentally and physically handicapped people are an incompetent drain. We have primed people to believe that various minorities are limiting and stealing from us. We have trained people to believe that women are overstepping themselves, and it carries because people like to have someone to blame for things. And if you can see a detail, again, even if it's a misrepresented detail that supports that position, you run with it. Very seldom do we turn around and go, okay, so the idea that immigrants, particularly illegal immigrants, are a drain on our economy. It is hard to get people to understand that those people are putting into a system they will never actually be able to draw from. So they are in and of that position a net bonus to that system. If they're bringing $700 million a year into the economy that they're not going to be able to take any fraction of for their retirement, for their health benefits, that $700 million is benefiting everyone else. How much are they taking out? 100 million, 200 million, 300 million, 400 million. It's still a net gain for the rest of us.
Well, so it's like there's a narrative that's been going on the last half century or longer. I would say probably been going on a lot longer than that. That it's a certain story that has been told that we want to tell ourselves that uh, that supports lies about black people, lies about trans people, lies about gay people, um, lies about immigrants. Not based, and people's stories frequently are not based on on data at all. They really don't care about it. It's their personal experience is what matters. Like, well, I have a friend who's a teacher. She's on the other side of the political spectrum, or was a teacher, and someone was talking to her there, and she was outraged that classrooms have now have litter boxes for furries.
Yeah,
And she asked me about it. She said, "Doesn't that upset you?" And I said, "Well, it's a fun story." I said, "I mean, it sounds like, but it's a complete lie,
yeah,
and it's based on a hoax that was started on the internet, and it has some logic to it. Oh, the furry community must need I don't know. Must
well,
it's
and in the more practical vision of that, we do the same thing with trans people and gay people. Gay people are promiscuous. Gay people spread disease. Uh, um, they are groomers. Uh, Transsexual people are some sort of bathroom perverts, um, locker room perverts. We have to protect people from them. And there's just no data to support that. If anything, we know quite well, if you look at the crime statistics, they are far more likely to be the victims of crime in those locations than any harm they have ever done anyone in those locations themselves.
and who's the most likely to do gun violence? It's very interesting. They said if they deported if they deported every white male between, so I read this somewhere, I could be wrong, every white male, it's a fun fact though. I mean, it's a fun potential fact, but maybe just data that somebody dreamed up. If they deported every white male between 18 and 50, gun violence in the United States would decline dramatically compared to deporting every illegal immigrant. It's like I was going, well, there's an interesting statistic. I wonder if it's true. I don't know,
Yeah, I've heard.
but
I've
it
heard
feeds our stories. Go ahead.
no. Go ahead. I was just saying I've heard a version of that.
Well, it just feeds we have this story. Everyone lives by a narrative, by a story. And there's a kind of and I think one of the problems in the country now is that we have two drastically competing narratives going on. And we've had and it's the narrative of racism and hatred of gay people and a suspicion of immigrants is as old as the history of our country. It's probably in Europe too, the same thing. People with different colored skin, people with different sexuality, and they've always been, those voices have always been properly suppressed, repressed, destroyed, and now those voices are being heard. Certainly from a MAGA point of view, it's wrong that they're allowed to be heard now. It's better the way things were back in 1950, I guess, where, kids, teenage boys, LGBT boys just quietly killed themselves and went away. We were able to hang black folks in peace.
Right.
It's LGBTQ people were just disappeared. They didn't exist. They weren't there. Like in Iran, there's no gay people in Iran. It's like they just weren't there in 1950. Black folks in my they were they were the other side of town in their own community, and they were kept there. Go ahead.
And I went ahead and, okay, so digging for details, and just as an example of how those details get twisted, I went to the Statista data set website, and according to them, it's basically 60% of all mass shootings are committed by white males. So 60% would immediately go away if you just took white males out of the equation. But at the same time, there is an attached data set that says that between the ages of 15 and 24, the majority of gun crimes are committed by black males. So that, you know, and that is the problem with statistics. You have to find them in the place that they actually apply. If you just pull them out whole like that, your answer could be almost anything.
Yeah.
Okay, so quick swing, because I know our time is going down. Hold on, let me bring this question back up. We are looking at, this one was actually a viewer question about how to approach our MAGA friend. I'm not 100% sure where we, you know, this way be the one we agree on. But the overall question was, if you have friends who have beliefs, how do you approach them, particularly under the circumstance where they're coming to you with those beliefs. They're telling you how they want things to be different. How do you handle that? And I'm sorry, let me address that. I have a fair number of Republican friends that I have to have these arguments with. And so, you know, and they're all the same. It is a discussion of, what is it you've heard? Why do you think that is true? Okay, here is where I get my information. Here's what my information says. Here is why I think the information you've been given is wrong. And I actually had to have that exact same discussion just this morning. They are very fond of finding minority speakers who agree with their position, as if a minority agreeing with them automatically justifies everything they've said to that point. The argument I had this morning was with someone who presented a Kenyan American woman who was saying that, you know, like for instance, in her country, they don't have, you know, they don't call each other black or white. And, you know, she went on to talk about their culture and, you know, the various different cultures that they have in her country, in her other country, and Kenya, that is. And how black people in America, following that Republican talking point, are being infantilized by Democratic leadership, and that is being used to hold them down and trick or force them to vote for Democrats who have none of their best interests at heart. And, you know, that entire discussion falls into just a series of, you know, what you're hearing her say versus what you actually know. Did you take the time to look at the fact that Kenya is only 1% white, less than 1% white? Of course, they don't call each other black. They have, they probably refer to each other by their actual cultural associations, which we know they do. They don't have to say black because that doesn't designate anything for them. In that discussion, if you want to talk about, they don't have the same issues we have because they are they're not a homogenous culture. They have cultural groups, and each of those cultural groups over the last 30 years they have been at war with one another. And the example that I gave was simply to say that if you're a part of one group and you go into the wrong territory, you could find yourself murdered simply because you're not part of that group. And worse, you could find that the government agrees with that action and helps cover up the fact that you were killed there. And that is absolutely no different than the American South from the turn of the century down into the 70s, 80s, and 90s, where we had to deal with, as the example I gave was the Mississippi burning context. Black and white people were murdered because they were being social activists. The state helped cover it up. White supremacists did it. The state helped cover it up. That's exactly the sort of problem you end up with. So it's not that as Black people we're being tricked, or that the Democratic Party is tricking us. I have all kinds of issues with the Democratic Party because they do not do enough. All their platform over the course of my lifetime. Let's go there. Over the course of my lifetime has only been the Republicans are against you. Don't vote for them. That's it. We're not going to do anything to make your lives better. We're not fighting to improve your situation or women's situation or minority situations or gay people's situations. You just can't vote for those guys because they actively are trying to hurt you, even though we're not actively trying to help you. That's my position.
So getting back to this idea though, so your friend, they're Asian American folks.
No, this is a white female I was having this conversation with.
A white female, oh, okay. So that's that question I have in my mind. Does it help to point out the facts that we have? And my experience of that is that it doesn't help any. I'm not sure it hurts, but I'm not sure that it really changes anything. It seems like people kind of they have very, very strongly held values for their story, for their narrative. That value is not informed primarily by facts. It's informed by deeply held beliefs that don't change easily. My bias is the only thing that helps in our individual relationships with folks that have strongly different narratives is a loving ear, is listening with love and sharing with love. And I don't see anything wrong with sharing our facts and sharing our point of view, but doing it with love, and not as an attack. Because as soon as we attack another person, they will defend. And when my beliefs are attacked, I want to defend. So that is a loving, kind, listening ear to me is the only thing that has any hope of resolving a conflict. Before the Civil War, you could see who was the guy that debated Lincoln? Can't remember who. There were debates about slavery. There were debates.
Oh,
and was it Sumner or I can't remember.
Oh, thank God! Now I got to go back to the internet for that.
Did
Lincoln Douglas.
No, I'm forgetting. Was he the very articulate black man that was? Did he debate? I don't know if he would even have. Not Frederick Douglass.
Douglass was a Democrat. What did he represent?
But it was debating. My point in all this is debating the facts doesn't change people's minds very much. It's like lived experience changes. I remember when I remember when gay folks were just plain invisible. And if they did rear their ugly heads, they were just, erased, suppressed, whatever. And I remember when I was a young adult, I remember some of the gay activists said, the way we're all going to change the world is by everyone being out in their part of the world. So that people can see their brothers, their sisters, their mothers, their fathers, their closest friends, their workmates, that many of them are gay, bisexual, lesbian, transgendered, to be visible. And I don't know how that is. Black folks have always been visible. The question is, can they be visible? This is where I think things change, where they're visible everywhere. They're visible as your doctor, they're visible as your teacher, they're visible as your husband or your wife. They're visible because they are just human like you are. They're just people who have different colored skin, or they're people that have a different sexual orientation. And everyone is a totally unique, different individual. That to me is what changes people's minds. I mean, so I'm working out in a pool with mostly Republicans, I suspect. And it helps me. I think I make a connection because I am loving and caring towards those people. And when they're loving and caring towards me, they make a connection with me. But we're visible. We're there. There was once in one of my water classes, there was a black woman who'd been an executive high up in the hotel industry, and she was very visible. And she was very who she was.
Yeah.
And she was so freaking funny, that it was so easy to connect with her. And she changed everything around us by her manner, her presence, everything. And I'm a segregated kid, still inside. I don't have a lot of experience with black people. I don't, because I was separated. And now I'm having experiences. And I watched my family deal with me coming out as bisexual. And they began to have that experience. And their dear uncle was gay. And he was out. And people began to have that experience. And black people speak out now. And and yeah, sometimes we don't like it because we get Clarence Thomas speaking out, we don't like some gay people. They're obnoxious because what are they? They're human. They're just unique individuals. They're humans. That's what I think will work, is that people get to be more visible. Everybody, including our transgendered brothers, sisters, non-binary folks, people get to be visible. And some of them are assholes, let's face it. And some of them are not. Most of them are just like the rest of us. They're people trying to find their own way with their families, with their loved ones. To quote Dear Rodney, can't we all just get along, Dear Rodney King. Well, no, we can't, but we can try, We can try to live with each other in peace and live and let live, Leave people alone, Just let them be.
Well, and the Republican side of our country would say that's what they're aiming for. Just let people be and stay out of their way. But that leads to a lot of separate ugliness. There's no perfect road. There just isn't. I want everybody to be free too, but there is no perfect road to that.
No.
So.
Well, I'm glad we solved that problem today.
Yeah.
Thank you for watching us. Do you have a final word for us, Mitch?
You're on your own, boss.
So we thank you for tuning in to Halo Love and Country. We are Love and Country is the name of a movie that's on Tubi and YouTube and Amazon. Watch it. Tune it in. Help us pay our bills by by buying Love and Country, the novel that's out from Northampton Press. It's all over the place. It's in ebook and hardback. Send us your comments. Send us your questions. Subscribe. Tell us you don't like us. We appreciate you listening.